Previously on Spooky Scary Socialist.
Porky! I knew it was you all along! And I could have gone away with it too if it weren't for you meddling commies. Take him away, NKVD. Thank you, sir, and please be on the lookout for any more counter-revolutionary activity.
Stupid commie. Should have given him a free helicopter ride. Who are you?
We've come to set you free.
Are you capitalists?
Yes.
So you own capital?
No.
Land?
No.
A small business?
Look, we're here because we all made response videos to the commie that locked you up. This is payback. If he thinks he can draw us all as soy jacks to win an argument, then he's dead wrong. So the most watched video on this channel is something I cooked up about 5 years ago where I debunked every anti-communist argument ever. In the half a decade since posting it, it's racked up over 2 million views and not a day goes by when someone comments.
Did you see Ubersoy's response video?
Are you ever gonna respond to Alcoholic Horse 49?
Why are you ignoring Fashy Furry's video absolutely destroying you? Are you afraid of the truth?
No, I'm not afraid of the truth. I just think there's probably better things to talk about. If you haven't noticed, there's a war going on, we're on the verge of a global recession, and... What? Who are you?
We've come to force you to respond to our videos, and we're ready to do it by force. Yeah, so just look up Spooky Scary Socialist Response.
No, not that one.
Ugh, why does YouTube's search feature suck so much now?
So, after watching all these response videos, the thing that stood out to me first was the hypocrisy of the pro-capitalist side. In my original video, when laying out definitions that socialism is the common ownership of the means of production and communism is a stateless, classless, and moneyless society, I added the caveat that under these definitions, the USSR and other communist countries technically wouldn't be communist because they, of course, had a state, but that I'd be calling them communist for the sake of the video because that's how regular people understand them. Despite that, some people watched this section and said I was doing the not true communism argument.
No. You can't complain about people on the other side saying the same thing over and over and over again when you're doing the same shit. Every time a communist opens their mouth, it's, oh, it wasn't real communism.
I'm sorry, did you watch the video? That was the opposite of what I said. You literally play the part where I say I'm going to accept the mainstream idea of communism. It's right there. So we're not off to a great start with the capitalist side not being able to listen to the words that come out of my mouth. But the absolutely gobsmacking part is that after saying I'm doing the not true communism argument, they proceed to engage in the not true capitalism argument. So when I say X thing is a bad part of capitalism, they hand wave it away by saying it's not real capitalism.
Alright, that's cool, bro. These aren't valid arguments because these things are not products of capitalism.
The Great Depression was also exacerbated by things like the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. A national bank and tariffs are not capitalist.
Isn't that convenient? While I dive into the causes of communist failures, capitalist encirclement necessitating strict security measures, deprivation caused by imperialism, and scarcity in a post-revolutionary environment, the capitalists blame capitalist failures on not true capitalism.
This is once again not a refutation of capitalism, but capitalist monopolies.
Wait, what? Is this guy seriously arguing that monopolies aren't an inherent part of capitalism? It's literally the board game of capitalism. How many levels of capitalist brain rot are we operating on? Here's a quick economic lesson from Lenin. Capitalist competition between small enterprises leads, as competitions do, to winners and losers. The winners consolidate their control over the market and naturally develop into monopolies. Monopoly capitalism, or imperialism as Lenin succinctly taught, is therefore the highest stage of capitalism. And look, I hate to be condescending, but the number of times this guy says not true capitalism is mind-numbing. Here's a non-exhaustive list of things he says aren't real capitalism.
These things are not products of capitalism. Our healthcare is not expensive because it needs to be. It's because the cost of medical care in the US as a whole is so inflated that it's basically mandatory. These prices got inflated because lobbyists and corporations were able to bribe the government, which is inherently authoritarian and not capitalist, which allowed them to charge for massive profit. This isn't capitalism, it's corruption. Not a refutation of capitalism, but capitalist monopolies.
Oh, it's not capitalism, it's corporatism, it's crony capitalism, it's corruption. I don't care. It's all capitalism. Cope. After shamelessly using the not true capitalism argument, almost every response attacked a study I cited in the no food lol section. Yeah, that study.
This is a common study cited by socialists, and it's a really bad one.
Which makes absolute sense, because those countries were included, but the author likes to be dishonest, so he never mentions it.
Basically, they use bad data, they call socialist countries capitalist, and they blame socialist failures on capitalism.
This small 6-page paper has probably generated over 100 times the pages with the amount of stuff people have written quibbling over it. And there's usually 3 main objections. 1, the classification of countries into socialist or capitalist. 2, the data itself. And 3, the age of the paper, being published in 1986. So, looking at the paper, let's see how they group different countries. Where did this mysterious classification come from?
The authors classify countries such as Burma as capitalist. Another capitalist country that they include is Sri Lanka. This is a huge amount of missing context.
Guys, it's here. It's here. It's literally right here in the World Bank. Wait, all of this is the World Bank? Always has been. So admittedly, that response video from earlier wasn't actually against me, but a fellow creator, Hakeem, who also cited the study. And if you want Hakeem's rebuttal to arguments against the study, it will be linked here. But for me, all this hootin' and hollerin' about this paper completely misses the point. The authors made this study after encountering a problem. That straight comparisons between socialist countries and capitalist countries are unfair because there's so many confounding variables. For example, the USSR industrialized much later than the United States, and only a few decades after its founding, had to deal with 2 world wars and a civil war. Of course, when you compare the Soviets to the US will comparably look better because, you know, it wasn't destroyed by Nazi hordes. This goes for most socialist versus capitalist comparisons. They don't make much sense when you're comparing countries at different levels of economic development. To remedy this, the authors controlled for that, grouping socialist and capitalist countries as low income, lower middle income, upper middle income, and high income, and then doing comparisons of physical quality of life. Using this method, they, as you all know, found that socialist countries were far superior than capitalist ones. But the authors knew that we'd once again run into the problem of definitions. Who determines what country goes where? What makes a country socialist? What makes it capitalist? World Bank, guys. It's all the World Bank. The paper was never meant to be painstakingly comprehensive. Once again, this thing is 6 pages. The authors took a reasonable shortcut and just accepted the classification scheme and data provided by the World Bank and ran their calculations. The paper is basically asking, if we take the classification and data from the World Bank, a capitalist institution, and control for economic development, do socialist or capitalist countries have a better quality of life? And the answer is a resounding yes for the socialist side. It's such a resounding yes that capitalists have to cope and pretend the paper's classification scheme was mysterious and arbitrary and not stated right there on the first page.
But the author likes to be dishonest, so he never mentions it. The Soviet Union, East Germany or Yugoslavia, which are in the middle income categories, should not have been compared to third world countries such as Iraq, Argentina, Algeria, Brazil, Iran, and a few others.
Wait, what? Those aren't the numbers? Even a cursory glance at the paper's tables show that they make no sense. Looking at this table on the second page and panning over to the upper middle income countries, his numbers for the Soviet Union and GDR are above the maximum range provided in the table, while Iraq and Iran are below the minimum. So instead of relying on whatever numbers he flashed on screen, let's, read the paper and follow its citations. Based on the World Bank report in 1984 UNICEF document the paper pulled its data from, these are the real GNP numbers they used. Looking at them, it's pretty clear the authors aren't stacking the deck in socialism's favor. Yeah, East Germany definitely has a high GNP for its category, but the capitalist side has countries with higher GNPs, and both the capitalist and socialist side have comparable averages. So, to recap, the pro-capitalist side can't read the first page of a 6-page paper, can't follow the citations to the statistics it's citing, use random other numbers instead, and can't even read a table showing that their numbers don't make any sense. But where did Ubersoy get these numbers anyway? Oh, they're from this MySpace-looking website using numbers from 1990, 4 years after this paper was published. For people who really love 1984, you'd think they'd be able to read a calendar, but it seems that basic chronology is a problem for capitalists because they love to complain that this paper is outdated because it was published in the mid-1980s. I wonder what major world historical event happened in a few years that caused most of these countries on the socialist side to not exist anymore or forcibly adopt capitalism.
So when communist states fail to defend themselves from capitalist massacres and genocides.
Okay, can you provide an example of a Western democracy doing a genocide of the communists? What is even the capitalist terror? Do they terrorize you with constant advertisements and subscriptions to fucking OnlyFans web pages?
Okay, from 1965 to 1966, US-backed forces in Indonesia engaged in anti-communist mass killings that claimed 500,000 to 3 million lives. Was that all? Wait, wow, the pro-capitalist side is really easy to debunk. All it took was reading a 6-page paper and naming one historical event. In all seriousness, mass murder for the sake of opposing communism has been a staple of US policy for a long time. In the Jakarta method, Vincent Bevins outlines this policy explicitly. As we have seen in the years 1945 to 1990, a loose network of US-backed anti-communist extermination programs emerged around the world, and they carried out mass murder in at least 23 countries. This loose network of extermination programs, organized and justified by anti-communist principles, was such an important part of the US victory in the Cold War that the violence profoundly shaped the world we live in today. The book describes the US-backed anti-communist mass murder campaign in Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, as a model implemented around the world. Before the 1973 US-backed overthrow of Chile's democratically elected Marxist president, for example, a message was plastered on the walls of its capital: Jakarta is coming. And the thing is, I explicitly named examples of capitalist terror, including 1973 Chile, in the original video. So not only are capitalists incapable of reading a 6-page paper, they can't even watch the video they're responding to. I guess they're too busy gooning to OnlyFans that they forgot a section they played in their own video a few minutes earlier. I can't get over this guy going on about OnlyFans as an example of capitalist terror. I'm sure this isn't at all a symptom of his other weird beliefs. Oh.
Now please tell me, which capitalist Western country had a single famine since World War I that killed at least 1,000 people?
Okay, if we want to talk about famines caused by capitalism, sure, you can stack the deck by looking only at industrialized rich countries after World War I. But that ignores the millions who had to die to create those rich Western industrial countries. The Great Famine of 1876 to 1878 in India, for example, was made deadly by British free market policies. After an intense drought, India nevertheless continued to export food to England while market speculation skyrocketed its price. The British colonial government, educated in the ideology of the free market, refused to intervene and let 6 to 8 million people die. In late Victorian holocausts, Mike Davis calculates that the introduction of capitalism all over the world led to between 30 to 60 million deaths from 1870 to the early 1900s. Murdered, as we shall see, by the theological application of the sacred principles of Smith, Bentham, and Mill. You know what? I'm tired of this guy. Let's switch to a different response video. I think one of them had a problem with that CIA study I cited.
I also want to add that if you're skeptical of that study I showed, the CIA itself acknowledged that American and Soviet citizens eat about the same amount of food each day, but that the Soviet diet is more nutritious.
The CIA was notoriously bad at collecting data on the Soviet Union, as pointed out by people like John Wilhelm. In his paper, Wilhelm brings up Igor Berman, who was a Soviet economist who heavily criticized the way the CIA gathered data. Now let's go back to Igor Berman, and specifically his book, Personal Consumption in the USSR and the USA. Overall, his data showed that the USSR was lower in quality and mostly lower in quantity, with the one exception of alcoholic beverages.
As a big supporter of the CIA, I'm really disappointed they got this one wrong. You let me down, bro. But jokes aside, none of this disproves the argument I made. Once again, the section is titled No Food Lol, and I offhandedly mentioned the CIA study to, let me read the quote, debunk the idea that everyone starved under communism. Even with these corrections, his statistics still show that there was no widespread starvation or malnutrition in the Soviet Union. So yeah, the point stands. Communism is when no food lol is a nonsense argument.
Even the tamest of tame suckdams are getting hit with the Venezuela line, which shows just how far right everything has gone.
Everything has moved right? I mean, yeah, as of 2024, the pendulum is swinging back, but this video came out in 2020. This was dead center in the COVID pandemic, when leftism was at its nauseating peak. I would not have been able to call this guy a retarded fag if I was living in 2020.
I love anti-communist slop tubers. So this was a point raised by 2 different response videos, and if you squint your eyes, you can kind of see their point. I mean, 2020 is remembered as peak woke, when Democrat politicians took a knee wearing kente stoles and everyone was picking up their copy of How to Be an Anti-Racist. But behind all the pageantry, yeah, 2020 was still a time of right-wing resurgence. Basically, no police budgets were actually cut as a result of the movement against police brutality. COVID allowed for the consolidation of wealth among the richest, and inequality still remains at an all-time high. Not to mention, the video was published while Trump was president in less than a month after he posed for a photo op after protesters were gassed and cleared out. Sure, people would get mad at you for saying slurs online, but in concrete terms, the proletarian uprisings of 2020 were co-opted by a liberal capitalist class that defended of any real revolutionary substance. But the thing is, a lot of these guys miss this analysis because they love saying slurs themselves.
Of course, this is all nonsense. Communists can come from any and all backgrounds, and are usually from the most marginalized groups.
Marginalized groups? You mean the
This is how you know this video's from 2020, because of this retarded Saint Floyd virtue signal.
guys are so weird. This is why I really don't like responding to these videos, because what do you even say to this? When they're not busy failing to read 6-page papers or misrepresenting arguments, these guys can't help but expose their myopic worldview. I know I'm getting sidetracked, but there is something to be gained by taking a wider look of the spooky, scary socialist response video industrial complex. All these guys, and they are all guys, make a video on me, and it's usually their most viewed or among their most viewed videos. The rest of their videos get basically no traction because their worldview is so off-putting and weird that no one watches them. But the thing is, even ignoring their terrible arguments and beliefs, according to their own logic, I already won! My video has more views than theirs, my audience is larger than theirs. Really, a response video wasn't necessary at all, because according to the free market, they're wrong. The future is looking bright, comrades. That's enough. If we can't beat you in the marketplace of ideas, our invisible hand is going to have to pull a few triggers.
Everybody gangsta till the commentator's animated YouTube avatar crosses his arms.
So, I obviously didn't respond to every point raised by these creators, but I did respond to the main ones. In all honesty, I put off making this video because I don't find it all that challenging or important to respond to them. I mean, their videos basically boil down to slur, 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 not true capitalism, slur, slur, slur. But the reason I ultimately decided to make this video is to reiterate the conclusions I came to 5 years ago. More than half a decade since the videos come out, everything I said about the current capitalist state of affairs remains true. The rich are getting richer, and wealth inequality is reaching an all-time high. The global capitalist order is more and more unstable as war ravages the planet, all the while the bourgeoisie profits from death and destruction. Meanwhile, climate change looms in the background as every passing year breaks record after record for hottest temperatures. I don't want to pretend that some of these guys didn't raise valid points about environmental degradation, suppression of the arts, and atrocities committed in the name of communism. But despite the imperfections of 20th century communism, it nevertheless represented a viable alternative that counterbalanced capitalism's hegemony. Although deformed by capitalist encirclement, it still checked capitalism's worst impulses, defeated fascism, and represented a beacon of freedom for national liberation struggles all around the world. With the communist camp extinguished, capitalism has laid bare its genocidal death drive and brings humanity closer and closer to the brink of destruction. To repeat my original video's conclusion,
We have to realize that capitalism is not natural. It is literally killing us and the world we inhabit. We must achieve an alternative, or it will drag humanity and planet down with it. Thank you to all my lovely patrons, and especially a grateful thank you to my top tier supporters, Fiasco Linguini, Caleb Peters, Adrian Solaris, Anthony Owen, Bills, Cutplay, That Australian Commie, T-Baby Comrade, and Sweet Niamhi. Thank you for watching, and as always, no war but the class war.